Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to have been invited, and thank you very much for the wonderful cake, Helen given to both myself and my wife, Christina. And Teresa, when she was giving introductory remarks, she said the Historical Society here in the Edmonton area among the Polish community had basically started asking a number of questions. Who are you? Where are you from? Why did you come? Why are you here? All that sort of stuff. So I was asked to say and tell you something about myself. What a heck of an assignment to get up in front of a crowd and talk about yourself, which is not really my intent, but I want to just share a few things with you. My grandfather on my father's side, Peter Kowalski, came to this country in 1908. And he came from an area of between 50 to 75 miles to the east of Krakow in southern Poland. And when he came to Canada, he spent a year or two in the province of Manitoba, then came to Alberta. And in Alberta, he got married in 1916, started raising a family, got divorced in 1926, moved to Glendon in northeastern Alberta, and then became the first non-Francophone to live in a Francophone community, the community of Bonnyville in northeastern Alberta. So there he was in 1930. At exactly that same time, leaving from Poland, were my grandparents on my mother's side. Here was a man of 44 with a wife of age 42, 5 children, and they're leaving Poland. Why? Why in 1930? They came across, landed in Halifax, took the train across Canada, came to Edmonton, got a new train that was moving out to Bonnyville, and arrived in Bonnyville the same year as my grandfather had. Why a man of 44 would pick up and leave in 1930 is a difficult question, and I'm not sure I've ever had the answer. If someone in this room has the answer, you can tell me later, because I would just be delighted to know what it is. My grandfather in Bonnyville on the Kowalski side went to work in the lumber camps north of Bonnyville in northeastern Alberta. And after 5 years had saved enough lumber to build himself a country store with a livery stable. And he kept it till 1950. My father worked for him. Then my father went into his own business, living in Bonnyville to the year 2000. In the meantime, my grandparents on my mother's side are scratching the land on a rock-strewn quarter section of land beside a river in northeastern Alberta, 180 miles from here. 10 years later, they had cleared 20 acres of land, and they had a farm valued at $2.50 an acre in 1941. My 2 parents got married in 1942. I was born in 1945, and I grew up in Bonnyville. And Bonnyville was an interesting place because my 2 grandparents were among the first Poles to move into that part of Alberta. Many Polish people who came to Edmonton, came to Calgary, came to Lethbridge, came to Medicine Hat, came to the Crow's Nest Pass, were amongst other Polish people. But if you lived in Bonnyville in 1930, there were only a handful of Polish people, just a small number. And then others came. Ukrainians came, some small amounts of Germanic people came, some Anglophones came, but all mixed with the majority of people who were Francophone. So there was a lot of intermixing. So what Thanksgiving did you celebrate? You didn't celebrate Polish Thanksgiving in 1937 in Bonnyville because there were nobody to celebrate the Thanksgiving with. Today you have and you are, and that's really wonderful. So we go to school in Bonnyville. It's a Francophone school. You're the Polish kid. You better learn some French if you want to get along. And beware of the person who would say, you know, the Francophone who said to the Polish kid, stay away from our women, stay away from our girls. They're not yours, they're ours. And on it went. So finally, you leave that part of Alberta, go to university, and you end up going someplace else. So after having done that in the Bonneville area, I moved to a place called Barrhead, which is 75 miles north and west of where we are today. Barrhead is an English community named after a Scottish town located south of Glasgow in Scotland. And the people who lived in the area, again, there were just a handful of Polish people, hardly any. The people who lived in the area, larger numbers of Ukrainian people, large numbers of English and Scottish people, of course, very significant numbers of Germanic people, small numbers of Italian people, but large numbers of Dutch people. So everybody had to get along. There were no real majorities other than the Anglophone, the English, which was the common language for everybody to communicate with. So here was this Polish kid who grew up in Bonneville, born in Bonneville, grew up in Bonneville, didn't really have too many Polish people that he could relate to there, ends up in Barrhead, where there's even fewer Polish people. Yet my name is Kowalski, and I'm very proud of that name. And I'm fiercely proud of the fact that I have Polish heritage. But I'm pretty much on the periphery. Those of you who live here in Edmonton, you have groups of people. They're large numbers of people. The community may be, am I guessing wrong, at 70,000 in that neighborhood? But so I end up in Barrhead. And I decided in 1979, when some of you were still planning to leave Poland to emigrate to Canada in the 70s, I decided to get in politics. So I run in this constituency which has no Polish people in it. Not only that, I have no relatives in it. But because of that, I'm a threat to no one. So I run and I get elected. 9 times later, in 2012, after 33 years, these people who only know me by the name Kowalski couldn't give a hoot. There's no intolerance or discrimination or anything like that that I've ever suffered. We're very, very supportive and very, very wonderful. And in this place, this land, there's a sign up here that talks about our land and our country in Canada. It has been very good to us. I'm part of a 5-generation inhabitation here in this province. My grandfather, Peter Kim, was in 1908. My father's born in 1921. I'm born in 1945. My son is born in 1983. And my grandson is born in 2014. That's 5 generations we're here. And we're intermixed, and we're proud, fiercely proud of who we are. Unfortunately, I have to confess to you, although my mother spoke Polish continuously until she passed away 2 years ago at the age of 96, she didn't teach it to her children. And I apologize for that. But on the other hand, I have had no problems communicating with anybody and listening to anybody today, and that's really significant and that's very important. I'm going to leave by telling you one additional story. Our delightful mistress of ceremonies basically welcomed everybody here and said that this is traditionally Treaty 6 land. A treaty is something that the British Crown established with all the indigenous native people in this country in the 1880s. And in the province of Alberta, where we're at, every Indian nation in Alberta has a treaty signed with the government of Canada, save one. And that's only because we're still debating the count of the number of people that were there when the white people went out to do the count in the 1880s. But in Treaty 6 is made up of a number of Indian nations. When I grew up in Bonneville, 1/3 of the children that I went to school with, grades 1 to grade 6, were Indian. Grade 7 to grade 9, they dwindled down to 2 or 3, and there were none that had ever gone into high school by the time I left high school in 1963. But swiftly I moved to Barrhead. I get elected, and I find out that I am the representative for First Nations. And I didn't know them at first. But I went to visit them. We started doing things together, and things started to happen. The name of the Indian band is 40 miles straight west of where we are right now. It's called the Alexis Nakota Sioux First Nations. And in 1993, they gave this Polish kid who didn't know how to speak Polish from Bonnyville, Alberta. They invited me to a big event that they had. There was 1,000 people there. A fire was made, a huge fire was made, and drummers were drumming in the background. And a diminutive little woman, an elder, she's no more than 5 feet tall. She comes up and she holds my hand, and she takes me to the edge of the fire, and she asks me to bend over so she can whisper something in my ear. And she whispered something in my ear. Excuse me, but I need reading glasses. It's an aging thing. She whispers in my ear that from now on, I am known as Washizu Shada O Sheikna, Chief. Chief Washizu Shada O Sheikna. Well, it meant nothing to me, the name, until she said, Chief, white man with a kind heart. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see a man, a grown man, stand beside a diminutive little 5-foot woman and see tears coming down his cheeks and saying, wow, to be adopted. Somebody who's second, third generation Canadian, 3 generations away from the old country of Poland. And now he's here in Canada, and now he's being adopted by a First Nation as an honorary chief. Can you think of anything more significant and anything more important? And for those little children in the audience, I want to show you something. So, the First Nations has 3 of these bonnets. One goes to the real chief, one goes to the elder, and the third goes to the honorary chief, in which they said there would only be one. They've never had one in their long history that goes back 7,000 years in this part of the world. And they said they'd never have another after I go. And I think that, wow, what an honor to give to a kid. What an honor to give to a young man. What an honor to give to the descendant of immigrants. What an honor to give to a person who's trying to make his way in this province among so many minorities in the province. So I thank you very much for inviting me to come today. Thank you very, very much for the wonderful cake. And thank you very, very much that my grandfathers decided to come to this country. Thank you very much that my grandfather survived in this country. And thank you very much that this country has given all of us, with different names, something. Thank you.